Great.
Hey, everybody, this is Sophia Nelson, Forbes contributor under our Forbes Women vertical, our 50 over 50, which is a fabulous vertical that we have. We like to spotlight women doing amazing things in the world who are over the age of 50, which is me, and it's a fabulous age, and it's great. And I have with me today someone very special, someone that I know personally. She is the new president of California State University in Stanislaus. Dr. Britt Rios-Ellis is here with me. Britt, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm definitely over 50, so thanks for including me in
Aren't
this
we all?
very special club.
But, a little bit of a lead into that, your 50s are amazing, I think.
Mhm.
What do you think about your 50s? Or if you're past them, what did you
I'm
think about
past so I think your 60s are sage. You really
them?
start
Really?
figuring out that you know a lot in your 60s and that you learned a lot in your 50s. You're still learning, but you really start to put it together because you can actually see your age playing out in others. So, I'm working with, folks that are younger than me most of the time. I'm like, oh, I thought the same thing when I was younger. I always say this quietly to myself, but it starts to solidify in a beautiful way.
You know,
I,
um, 50
I,
is what I love is the 50s are they're getting a lot more attention. You see,
mhm,
anytime you're aging, I'm talking to myself here. When Halle Berry is talking on Capitol Hill about menopause and
yeah,
she's in her 50s, you go, okay,
yeah,
understood.
we're there.
The most beautiful woman in the world back in the
Mhm,
day still is. But really talking about what women go through.
mhm.
And I love that we have really taken it upon ourselves at Forbes to spotlight women after 50 and up. And I've been amazed at how many women are doing extraordinary things in their 60s and 70s still.
Mhm.
And so I'm excited to have you with us today. So let's let people know a little bit about you, Britt. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, where'd you grow up, and how did you get into education and, get to the level of a president of a university?
So, I would say that I was raised on the West Coast. I was born in San Francisco. My parents were actually hippies in the 60s in San Francisco. So that was an interesting start. I don't remember much of it, but they moved up to Portland and, started careers. And I was blessed to have my mom was a Republican. My dad was a Democrat. My mom was a very Lincoln Republican, similar to what you describe as you being. And then, I won't say
You
where
see
they
who's
are.
behind me, Lincoln, right? He's my
Exactly.
little bobblehead. Right.
That's why I brought it up. So it was, but I was blessed my mom is just a really brilliant woman. And my dad is a very social justice individual who, he passed now, but he was very grounded in always doing the right thing for everyone around him. And I feel very blessed to have had the fusion of both of them in terms of my upbringing. And that really grounded me. I wanted to be a politician when I started out. So I have a
Still
degree
can
in
be.
I don't know. Maybe it's not a good time for
I
me,
I I
but
might agree with that.
yes, but I do know how to work a room, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
And so I have a degree in political science. I have another degree in Spanish, so si hablo español, and I have a master of science in physician assistant. I mean, not in, sorry. I gotta X that
It's
because
all good.
physician assistant. So I have a bachelor in political science, another one in Spanish, and then I have a master's of science in exercise physiology and fitness management.
Interesting.
And then, wanted to go to medical school for a while and then realized that I really wanted to have a family and I did want to focus on research. So I have my PhD in community health
Wow.
and feel very blessed to have led major health national initiatives. I was a special government employee for HRSA, Health Resource Services Administration, the CDC, SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and NIH in
Wow.
HIV and AIDS. So
Wow.
I have a real breadth of health and human services. And I founded two centers that are very near and dear to my heart. the Center for Latino Community Health Evaluation and Leadership Training, and then another barrio-based center called Centro Salud es Cultura, or the Center for Health is Culture in Long Beach. And I realized as a professor that I needed to have a little bit of more of authority to get the things done that I wanted to get done. So I went into administration and I became the founding dean of the College of Health and Human Services at Cal State Monterey Bay. Crazy thing happened in, the Carmel fire. My house burned down. 5 days later, I
Ooh,
interviewed to be the executive vice president and provost at Oakland University in Michigan, which was a wonderful experience and where I met you.
yes.
And then 3.5 years later, I came out and I have the honor of serving as the president here at Stan State.
So let's back up a little bit. Your parents shaped your life and your outlook, taught you about public service, education, etc. Before I ask my first real question, beyond getting to know you, do you have a family? Tell us about your family.
I do. I am very blessed to be married to an incredible artist. He has a doctorate of musical arts from USC. He's a
Wonderful.
music professor and musician. He used to run the jazz program at Oakland. I don't know if you heard him when you were out here, but he's
I didn't
he's
know that.
fantastic. And we've been married for almost 30 years.
God bless you.
Wouldn't change a day. And if the Buddhists are right, I hope I get the next 6 lives. And
That's
then I
nice
have
to hear in this day and age that somebody still loves somebody after
oh,
30 years
absolutely.
and likes them. That's a good thing.
Yeah, deeply, deeply.
Good.
And then I have 3 children. My oldest is Xochitl. She is doing production and all kinds of work on verticals actually in LA.
Nice.
And she has her bachelor's in theater from UC Santa Cruz. My middle child, Enrique, we call him Kike, finished at the New School in film and the arts, and he's actually performing in Athens right now.
Greece.
Yes.
Wow.
And then my daughter is a painter, graduated from California College of the Arts on a full ride, and she's doing all kinds of work with refugee and immigrant youth and painting Fillmore posters and just doing phenomenal work.
Well, you sound like a wonderful family and good for you. Sorry that your house burned down. Good goodness. Monterey is a beautiful area, and so is Carmel. And I remember when the fire happened, and just grateful that you all were safe. I think, sometimes, Britt, I'd love to get your thoughts on as God takes us on these journeys,
Yep.
right? Where unexpected mishaps, tragedies, unfortunate things happen, and they're actually leading us to something better that brings us back to where we were supposed to be. Thoughts?
I absolutely agree. And I just remember it was a devastating time. We lived in Carmel Valley, so we were in zone 1. And it was during the pandemic, right? So
Mm.
we didn't have access because California uses the nonviolent prisoners to supplement the firefighting force. And of course,
Oh,
at that time, 35% of prisoners had COVID. So the firefighters were working with skeletal crews. And unfortunately, we were evacuated with 20 minutes, had police in our front door saying, you got to get out now. And 3 days later, we lost everything. So it
wow.
was a traumatic period, but, thankfully, I'm very blessed with, a very tight family, very loving family, and we all came out okay.
Okay, well, I'm grateful for that. And again, I'm just that's a lot to go through. California is I went to college there. It's a beautiful place, one of those beautiful places on earth. And yet you guys have a lot of natural disasters, fires, all kind of things. So we're
Yeah,
always thinking about you back here on the East Coast and glad that you're back home and
yeah.
in the valley and doing great work. So let's get into it. My first question to you is, you talked a little bit about your journey from teacher, professor to now administrator. What was a defining moment for you when you realized that you wanted to lead, not just teach? Like, did something happen? You got denied something? Somebody didn't let you do something you wanted to do passionately? What was that moment that made you realize, you know what? I want to be in the leadership, provost, president, etc.
So, I was already leading a team of about 90 people. I've always been blessed I'm a good writer, a good grant writer, a good student. I love being a professor. So I had a lot of folks, collaborators across other universities, as well as students, faculty working with me. So I think there was a moment where I realized that we were so good at bringing in resources and we were I'm a very data informed person. So there were structural changes that needed to be made at the university. And we were showing with both qualitative and quantitative data that those changes needed to happen, and they weren't happening. And that
Mm.
was when I thought, if I need to be in these roles to really ensure that this good work is integrated. Universities sometimes don't change as fast as we need to. I was just reading a book on CEO excellence, and CEOs say the one thing that's changed over time is that we have to make decisions faster and
Yes.
quicker.
It's
And
technology, right?
right.
And AI is going to rapidly change it.
Also, we have to remember where our planet's going. And having been a victim of my family survived losing everything in a fire, we also have to make more decisions thinking ahead in terms of climate change, in terms of technology, in terms of a breadth of things. And I think I have been blessed with that knowledge, both applied and learned, to be able to do that. So in that moment, when this opportunity came up, it just seemed like the right fit at the right time. So here
Mhm.
I am.
Public universities are engines of mobility as well as economic infrastructure. We don't often think of them that way, but they really are. Like you just said, you got to keep moving, you got to be quicker. Artificial intelligence is vastly going to change the way that young people learn, that professors teach, that leaders lead. And I guess if I were to ask you, what do people misunderstand most about the role of regional public universities like CSU Stanislaus as an engine of opportunity? Talk to me about those opportunities and what makes a CSU Stanislaus serve as an engine of opportunity in the Northern Central Valley, and what does student success mean on your campus?
So, I when I think about the criticism to higher ed, I do want to preface this question with I think people were looking at campuses that cost $60,000 a year and above. I just want to say you can do your 4-year degree and your master's degree at CSU Stanislaus for less than the cost of 1 year at the privates.
That's
So
amazing.
the national consciousness really needs to separate what is a public institution that's accessible and affordable, and where and there are roles for both, right? But our real purpose within the CSU is to be accessible, to be affordable, to provide high quality education, and to transform lives into careers. So
Understood.
one of the things that we do is really teach our students, jobs are one thing. We want to help you build a career. We are so blessed to be ranked fourth nationally in social
I
mobility.
saw that.
We do, and this is Wall Street Journal. We're the sixth best public college in the West by Washington Monthly, and we're recognized by College Futures as a mobility leader. And we're designated by Carnegie as both an opportunity university and a community engaged university. So we give back millions of dollars a year in the Central Valley through internships, service learning opportunities, and our folks. The greatest thing that our employers in our region say is we can recruit people from the outside, but they often don't stay.
Sure.
People you train stay. So when we look, for example, at Gallo, over 60% of their management workforce are graduates of Stan State. And that's what we want to do. We really transform. We are a steward of place within the Central Valley.
Tell me about for those of you that don't know, Cal State Stanislaus is a Hispanic serving institution of higher learning, which is very interesting to me because, when Vice President Harris was in office, there was a lot of focus on HBCUs, and there always has been. I mean, most Black doctors, lawyers, engineers, et cetera, come from HBCUs, even
Mhm.
though there are only about 100 of those schools or less in the United States. They turn out the majority of African American leadership leading up to the vice presidency of the United States. And Hispanic serving institutions isn't something we talk about a lot, which is why I wanted to be very intentional to include you in the spotlight I want to do for women in Women's History Month who are leading in a different way. You talked about a lot of things that you do at Cal State Stanislaus. What I find interesting about what you said is there seemed to be the affordability, the mobility, the fact that you are growing the talent right there in the valley that will then be able to go out and work and create an educated workforce that can do anything and everything. That's probably the future of education, at least I hope so.
Hmm.
But talk about being a Hispanic serving institution and doing that and leading that, Britt, in a time where we are very polarized on this issue affecting a unique subset of American people, Hispanics.
When I look at our university, our students are incredibly respectful, resilient, brilliant. They know how to improvise. Their lives have not been easy. Right?
Mhm.
They have learned, most of them are working. 60% of our students identify as Hispanic Latino, 70% are first generation, and 63% are Pell eligible.
Mm.
They're on the lower socioeconomic spectrum. That has created an opportunity for me to really highlight something that I think I see in our students, I see in our faculty every day, our staff, everyone on this campus is very cariñoso. So we lead with cariño. And cariño, if you look it up in the dictionary, it says sweetie, honey, cute, affectionate. It might be all of those things, but it's also committed, accountable, resourceful, caring, compassionate, and we lead with the power of all of those things. So, I've really branded my leadership here and, our entire cabinet team and and it's very much resonated. Every couple times a month, I go on walks with the president and anyone can come and walk. We have a beautiful campus, Sophia. I hope I have a chance to show you. It is
I've
gorgeous.
seen the pictures. I had to look up where Stanislaus was because I went to school in Southern California in San Diego. And everybody knows the coast, right? The up
Right.
here and the down here, but nobody knows that Central Valley and the Northern Valley, which is wine country. It's beautiful. I
Yes.
imagine it's very pretty.
It is. It's gorgeous. So I go on walks, and I had one of our professors who is an immigrant from Africa, and he came and he brought his son to walk with us, his baby son, which, I'm a grandma wannabe. So it was a great walk. And
Grandma wannabe.
he said, I, yeah, he said, I really wanted my son to feel some of your cariño because
Mhm.
it's obvious. And I think, when we can create that caring environment, it's so important. And what I hear is that young folks want leaders who really care. And that has been something that I love our campus. I love our students, and I don't use the word love like lightly,
Understood.
but it is something that you really feel when you come on to Stan State. It feels like a family.
Earlier you talked about growing your talent right there in the Valley so that the employers in the region and statewide, of course, and everywhere can tap into that. And I think, and we'll talk about diversity and inclusion later in this climate that you college presidents have to navigate very uniquely right now. But what industries are you most aligned with in the Central Valley, Britt? And how are you preparing students for AI and technological disruption of the workforce? I mean, that's got to be a big thing. Thoughts?
Well, we are definitely throughout the CSU, the Chancellor Mildred Garcia made I think a really great decision in terms of investing in AI for everyone. So all of our students have access to Chat GPT and other sources so that we're starting to really integrate it. And I always say it is the processor, not the thinker,
Right.
right? And we're at institutions are there to help folks analyze and think critically. So use AI as the processor, right? The information extractor. Know how to ask the right questions and give the right prompts. And that's how we're integrating it. But every student, faculty member, staff has an account at the CSU, which is a wonderful resource for us.
So you're teaching them to accept, hey, this is a part of your reality going forward. You're going to have to know how to use this. How do you see what skill set will define success in the next decade? Just let's take the next 10 years. Where are we headed? What skills are students going to need, not just there in the Central Valley, Northern Central Valley, but kind of writ large?
Well, I mean, I think we're thinking about a lot of stuff. One of the things in the Central Valley, we produce 25% of the nation's food on just 2% of of
Wow.
the nation's farmland.
Wow.
We folks are really dependent on this region. So when I think about how we can use AI to better understand agricultural production, to better understand supply chain. So, when there is another pandemic, and hopefully there isn't, but we can kind of see what can happen. We want to make sure that, folks have what they need and are working together. So I think, relational capacity is going to be really important. How folks build relationships, how folks work with each other, how folks experiencing each other in terms of, and this is where Cariño is going to come right back in,
Cariño.
do that, right? AI cannot do that, but people can.
Mm.
So, that EQ is going to be very important for leaders and for every graduate to make.
I'm really want to work with this next generation of young people on what kind of human beings are we building? What are we teaching them matters in terms of their skill set, their emotional intelligence, like you're saying. I think that that is really the future. Your thoughts on how we're shifting from, I feel like Gen Z, millennials and Gen Z are very different from me as a Gen Xer, you as a baby boomer. Thoughts about that in terms of how we're shifting on how we connect and form?
I do really think it's important. I always call myself to, and I teach this when I have the opportunity to go out and work with students and leadership groups, is to really think about, we don't ever want to react unless we're in a dangerous situation. We want to call ourselves to responsiveness, and
Absolutely.
hopefully that we've had the time to reflect. And the technology around us all the time kind of limits that
Mhm.
sometimes, and we need to call ourselves to that real human potential of having the opportunity to always give a reflective response, right?
Agree.
I think it's very.
So slowing down, being deliberate.
No, it doesn't mean that we're not going to respond quickly, because again, CEOs are saying we have to make decisions faster, but we can only make those decisions well if we've had the opportunity to reflect, right?
Mhm,
And to really
mhm,
think about things, and also to collaborate with others, right?
mhm,
At universities, we talk about shared governance to
mhm,
make sure that we're calling people and reaching out and having those conversations so
mhm.
that the decisions make sense, not just for one individual or one group of folks, but for everyone, or as many as possible.
Talk to me about the healthcare workforce pipeline. Is that something that you're focused on, getting workers? We talked off camera about the healthcare industry and its impact in the region you live in, but also in the state of California. Again, you guys have what, 40 million people in the state of California? That's most of the whole, I can start in Maine and work my way down to
Yeah.
most of the Eastern Seaboard. But talk to me about healthcare workforce pipeline. And again, in your unique footprint with a Hispanic serving institution,
Mhm.
how are you prepping the workforce?
So, we are a Hispanic serving institution. We're also a rising and a PC. So, Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander institution. We're
Nice.
right on that edge. So we have pockets of communities that really need culturally resonant care in many ways,
Mhm,
right? In
mhm,
Stockton, we have a large African American population. And we know that people are at their most vulnerable when they're sick or ill or worried about, potential diagnosis. We need to make sure that we understand the way communities can receive care so that patients can adhere, right? And when I think about health services, I'm also thinking about human services, such as
mhm,
social workers. And we saw during the pandemic when everybody went into their silos and we lost lives because of it, right? And providers burnt out and left careers early when they were desperately needed in terms of the nation's workforce. When I think about what's happened throughout the United States, we gained, I think, 685,000 jobs, um, or 685,000 between new jobs between January and November last year. 10,000 of them were healthcare and human services. And that means that we would have lost 85,000 jobs had we not gained, were it not for the healthcare and human services workforce. So, we're often talking about, the importance of really getting to those groups and raising the provider density within these regions, particularly with folks who are going to stay there where they're
yeah,
trained. So in the Central Valley, we have a real lack of healthcare providers and a lack of health and human services providers. So, our social workers, counselors. So we're really ramping up those programs. We're creating a new college of health, education, and human services, which is very important, and making sure that we're training homegrown providers that not only understand their roles, but can work together to form a network around communities that are going to help communities continue to thrive.
So it sounds to me, Britt, like you're there for the long haul. You are really digging in to really do some amazing work and really build out the university and build it up. And I think this is something you're going to stick with for a pretty long time. Is that the plan?
Yes, I love it here.
Wonderful.
It's a community, again, not only at the university, but throughout the Central Valley. It's just been a wonderfully welcoming community. It feels like a great functional family in, in many accounts.
That's refreshing to hear. And it's also, I think, important too for, again, people that live in the big cities. You know, you hear so much, Britt, about burnout and
Mhm.
stress and exhaustion. And I can tell you are a different you than the one I met at Oakland University. I'm saying that as a compliment. You just seem much more chill. What's that word you use? What's it called?
Oh,
The word.
Cariño?
Yes, that word.
Cariño? Well, and I don't know if I'm hoping that the people that are working with me would call me chill. I don't know. I move very quickly. But I think, we can have a great time working hard.
Yes,
And that's
I
what
think
we're
that's
doing,
I think that's
and,
right.
and in an environment where folks are cared for and their families are known and we're working together in a common purpose.
So let's switch to that. This will be kind of the last section that I want to talk about with you. It is America's 250th birthday this July 4th, 2026. I think it's fair to say we would all agree our country's deeply divided. We have a lot of stressors. Our people are at each other's throats. Again, this issue of immigration and detaining people and how we're going to treat our fellow human beings is a huge one. And I think the republic is being tested right now in some
Mhm.
very difficult ways. Let's talk about that civic and moral formation. What is the role of the university and what are you doing to get your students engaged around civic duty and moral formation, if you will? What thoughts on that?
So, you're absolutely right, Sophia. I'm watching what's playing out every morning, every night, whether, through reading the newspaper or watching television, thinking, oh my gosh, how could we have lost our way?
Mm-hmm.
We're involved in multiple conflicts now. We're leaving things undone that we start. It just seems like, our attention is not where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, we've lost a great deal of our allies and friends throughout the planet, right? So, in moving that forward, again, I'm going to go back to Cariño. And I'm going to say that it's really important. And just like Maya Angelou said, people will not remember what you said, but they will remember the way you made them feel, right? And if we
Absolutely.
can integrate, what AI is doing with that cariño and really keep that human capacity moving, we can create a new kind of leadership. And I think, our campus, we are building leaders and we are building the future of the Central Valley. And for us, that's really extremely important
What
because
does
we
integrity mean in institutional leadership today? What would you say? How important is that back to that formation of civic and moral duty, respect, civility?
Mhm.
Talk to me about that.
So I think it means thinking ahead. When we think about our Native American ancestors that often thought 7 generations ahead, we seem to be thinking sometimes not even 30 seconds or 30 minutes ahead. So we really have to have a long game. And some of the best advice that I heard when becoming a president was start as if it's your last day. What do you want to accomplish? And that's going to shift every day as you learn more, right, about the opportunities that present themselves, but also the legacy you can build. And I think, for me, when I think about whether people are to the right or the left or, you know, conservative or liberal, those words are no longer useful for us.
I
They
agree.
really aren't. And when you travel internationally, which I do all the time, you hear people saying in other nations using things that are assumed as being left as right. And it makes no sense. We
Mm-hmm.
have to stop dividing and we have to start bringing together. And I
Mm-hmm.
think in terms of university leadership, and we need to realize that we're going to disagree with people that we can love deeply. And that doesn't stop that love, right? We are all evolving souls on this planet. Let's evolve together in a much more intentional way while we take care of what's around us and build prosperous futures. And I always think, just because someone wants something and another group wants another thing, my dreams are not your nightmare, right? And the way that our world is dividing, it's as if when someone's dream comes true, it's another person's nightmare. And I'm thinking that is not prosperity.
Yeah, I think that's
Prosperity.
right. I think that's right. Let's talk about two things on that point. Two for question. What do you see the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion now, given the climate, the cut down, the actual, I did a piece last year on the number of African American women being affected by cuts to DEI, particularly in corporate America. So it's affecting women in general, particularly women of color. So my first question is, what do you see the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion in academia and in universities, given the lawsuits, the undoing of progress for
Mhm.
decades and in some instances centuries? How do you manage that as a university president? And then my second question is, what role specifically do you see Latina women playing in the future of American leadership? Because I feel like white women and black women, we're doing okay. Our Latina sisters are behind. That's not their fault, and certainly our indigenous sisters are. So thoughts on, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the role that Latina women play in the future of American leadership?
So, I'm blessed to live in a state that is extremely diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wish that we would have treated racism and discrimination as a public health issue. And I'm
Interesting.
a public health, right,
Yeah.
person. So, because when I think about, when I see it play whether it's a microaggression or a macroaggression, I want to ask people, are you prepared to treat your grandchildren differently because of the way they look? Because California is really, really diverse. And when we look at the system, the number of mixed race students we have, it
Mm-hmm.
is escalating really quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
somehow we're hanging on to things that our younger folks are getting ready to, and maybe not in all cases, but are preparing to let go, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
to move through. And I've always said, we don't want to be a melting pot. We really want to be a salad bowl, right? Just because things change doesn't mean you unlearn a history or traditions or values, which to me are so important. And
Mm-hmm.
when I think about the Latino community, I think those values are what have made Latinos so resilient. And Cariño is one of them, right? And Cariño is really consistent often within Latino families. And I don't want to look at Latino families with rose-colored glasses.
Sure, sure.
I know there are issues, but um, by and large, you feel a sense of trust, or what we call confianza. You feel a sense of simpatía, or the need for harmony, which is very similar to some Asian cultures like Japan, right? You feel a sense of familismo and the importance of family, and how, when I see our students walk across the stage, oftentimes what's written on their caps, their graduation caps, are just, you came here with nothing and you gave me everything, you know? And they're saying this to their parents and their ancestors. And I always tell our students, you are your ancestors' wildest dreams in
Yep.
every positive way.
So do you see more doors opening for, Latinas? Yes, no, maybe.
I think that we have to be really intentional about mentorship, right? And when you ask me about DEI, think, diversity is not going to go away,
Never.
right? Just because, what it feel very badly about, it's as if a group felt left out, right? So as opposed to thinking, and I'm a white woman who very much is acclimated to Latino, well, if you could say Latinx culture, and there are diverse cultures within Latinos as well. So predominantly Mexicano. If you think about that, why do we think that we have to have less of one thing, right? So I often think, do people have to acculturate? Because we've had that, right? You lose your own culture and then you kind of meld into what, or can you have, just like we have with physical things, a myriad of tools that you go to when you're trying to solve problems? And it's interesting because when I was working a lot more in STEM with different projects, we would have CEOs come in and say, I want the most diverse group of engineers solving this problem because I know they're going to come at this with different perspectives. And
That's right.
science will tell you that, right? Diversity really helps science. It helps thought. So, in my mind, welcoming all of that. And, DEI, people say, oh, are we going to take it away? It's kind of what we do, it's who we
Right.
serve,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
So,
That's encouraging. And again, I know it's difficult terrain to navigate right now, but you are in California. You're in a wonderful state university system that's very diverse with women leading everything from the chancellorship to campuses. What a difference from when I started college in the fall of 1986 and the world that was there was very white, very male. Today it was president of San Diego State University. I remember, you know, um,
so,
you
so
know,
That's a great example. I mean,
it
I
is.
look at our chancellor, Milly Garcia, is a phenomenal Latina leader.
She is.
Adela de la Torre, the
Yep.
president of San Diego
Of my
State.
alma mater, right? She's amazing.
Vania
Oh,
Quiñones, who's the president of Cal State Monterey Bay.
and it also reflects the shift in population and
Yeah,
demographics, and we don't have time to get into that,
right.
but
And
I think that's
Cynthia Teniente
understood.
Matson at
Yes,
San Jose State. So when I look at our system, I feel very, very blessed to be in a
yes.
system where we have a lot, particularly of female diversity at the highest levels.
So let's switch to my last set of questions for you, and we'll wrap this. And I want to talk about you. And this is kind of like my rapid fire section, if you will, but you can answer the question. The first question that I would ask is, what still surprises you when you kind of pinch yourself and say, I'm a president of a university? What surprises you about being a woman university president, both good and maybe not so good, that kind of makes you think every day like, wow.
So I feel very blessed to be in my job every day, even on the hardest days, right? I remind myself this feels like a blessing. I'm still surprised that, some of the issues are still what they are. I think about our reluctance to deal with really tough things. There's some
Yep.
files out there that haven't been looked at. I
Oh, let's
so I
not
think
go there. But
and
I'm with you, sister.
what we know is that trauma left untreated will be transmitted. So when I think about the
Boy, that's a great quote. You ought to put that on a T-shirt.
well, it's not my quote. It comes from somebody else, but it's absolutely true. And I learned it from Dr. Kenchis Watson, I'll say, from American University, an incredible African American scholar. But so true. If we don't treat
I can't
trauma,
believe you know Candace. That's crazy.
yeah. If we don't treat trauma, it will be transmitted. And I think what we're seeing play out, you know, not only in our nation, but probably most predominantly right now in our nation, as well as throughout the planet, is we need to focus on correcting what's been wrong
Absolutely right.
and really being able to talk about what's been wrong. If we
Absolutely.
don't, things are historically specific. If we don't correct things, we will be destined to repeat our mistakes.
That's right. What advice would you give aspiring women leaders in academia like yourself? If you aspire to be, I don't know that someone wakes up when they're 12 and says, I want to be a college president. They might, or a provost or a chancellor. But what advice would you give women who want to be leaders in academia? Because it's still an overwhelmingly white male dominated profession.
So I would say, and you asked me about Latina leaders earlier on. I would say ask questions whenever you feel that you're feeling imposter syndrome, like there's nobody like me at the top. Really go back and reflect on that because you will find those answers if you look for them. I think getting involved in university training systems like those and training programs like at the American Association of State Universities and Colleges, ACE, those types of programs are there to really teach you, and they want diversity in their ranks. So I would say, never question yourself about being ready. You can always reflect later and look for true feedback, right? Don't look for people just to tell you you're great, right? I want, even when we have a great
Truth teller.
event and things are fantastic, I'll say, what could I have done better,
Yeah,
right? Because we are, again, if we're doing our jobs right, we're consistently evolving and doing things better.
right. So, just two last questions for you. What do you think is something that women bring to institutional leadership, and in this case, academia, that is undervalued? That people just don't get how important it is still? I know it's a big question, but I
It
feel
is.
like women were always undervalued. But in academia, in your institutional leadership, what is it that women bring that we need more of that people still haven't figured out yet?
So I would say that we are exceptional multitaskers. It's just been a part of our lives. So people say, "Oh, you can't multitask, or you can multitask." I could describe to you some moments where I've done some pretty effective multitasking. I think women are used to improvising a lot more than other groups, which could be problematic or not. But and I also think that we do bring a sense of greater compassion and forethought to many of the things that
The
we,
IQ.
yeah,
It's
the
the IQ.
EQ portion, because we've had to maneuver in these realms, right? And so I think, we are able to integrate the EQ and IQ.
I agree.
And, but I do feel it's important to bring as many people along with us as we go, right? And I
Hmm.
think women do a fairly good job of that.
Lift others as you climb. Lift
Exactly.
as you climb. That's from my book, The Woman Code. I give
Yes.
myself a plug.
Yeah, there you go.
Last question, framing back to America 250. As America approaches its 250th anniversary this July 4th, what role do institutions like CSU Stanislaus play in shaping the next chapter of the American promise, renewing it, redefining it, refining it, giving it a rebirth, if you will? Because I think we desperately need that. I think we can all agree, whether right, left, center, independent, that our guardrails have not really held up very well in this last couple of years. It's been difficult to watch things play out, and there's a feeling of helplessness out there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what is it that institutions can do, and presidents like yourself and leaders in shaping this next chapter of our American story?
So I really think that we can integrate accountability, kindness, compassion, contextual resonance into our leadership. And I think that is vital. And I'm going to go back to Cariño again, because I think it is something that is not has it hasn't been as valued as it should be in leadership. We talk about, and again, a lot of Western thought often dichotomizes, right? Left or right, conservative or progressive, hard or soft. We dichotomize, and even though we know the answer is sifting through the gray. And, we need to make room for diverse thought. We need to be able to disagree with each other. And we also need to recognize that nothing is stagnant, that we are all in this evolutionary process. So what I believe one day may be very different than what I believe the next day. And we need to give folks room to grow.
I
And I
think
think
that is
universities do that.
absolutely right. It helps us to build bridges. It helps us to renew that promise. And Britt, this has been a great conversation with you. I am going to probably follow up with some written filler things, but I think, we've touched on everything I wanted to touch on.
Great.
And any last thing you want to leave that you would like to say about CSU Stanislaus, or just what you think is an important thing to share as someone who's not just in academia, but you're a college president. That's a very vaunted, rare role that women get to have, and women of color even less so. Thoughts?
So I think, if I'm thinking about, speaking to women, we need your leadership. We need you to be involved, particularly women who have been underrepresented in leadership historically. We need your viewpoints. We need your cultural resonance. We need your ability to improvise. And, I'm just grateful that we have the opportunity to highlight Stan State and also highlight the CSU. We are the largest university system in the world. We graduate more folks than any other and send them out into the workforce. And we know, I'm proud to share Stan State's rankings, but I think if you looked across the CSU, in fact, I know if you looked across the CSU, you will see these rankings get multiplied. I mean, within the CSU, we are not only concerned about graduating students, we are concerned about their prosperity post-graduation. So I'm very excited about our new system-wide strategic plan, CSU Forward, and how our student success framework is going to build upon students and alumni, graduates, alumni throughout their lives, right? And it's a very, very powerful force. And I am so grateful to be a part of it.
Well, again, thank you. I am so delighted that we met at Oakland University in Michigan and that we're remaining connected. And you were the first person I thought of when I thought of doing this series for a lot of reasons. But I think it's important that we spotlight women. You know, we all know who the women we see all the time, whether it's Melinda Gates doing amazing things or God bless Mackenzie Scott. She's just amazing with what she's been doing with HBCUs is radically changing what those schools will be able to do in the future. And
Mhm.
women are leading all over. And Forbes, as you know, is right at the heart of that with our 30 over 30, 40 over 40, 50 over 50. But I think you're doing important work because you have such a unique footprint that we talked about at the outset and really developing the next generation of leaders that are Hispanic,
Mhm.
Latino. And that matters because the demographics of this country, whether folks want to deal with it or not, this country is going to be majority minority in just what, 15 years or something like that? It's not too far
Absolutely.
away.
And, and having studied demographics for so long now, it's going to happen faster than folks think.
Absolutely. So we have to, I love, you're going to have to spell the word for me so I can get it right when I write this up. But I kind of love this ethos that you have that's wrapped in a emotionally aware.
Hmm.
Emotional awareness is everything for future
Yeah.
generations. I feel strongly about that. And I talk about that a lot in my next book about laying out that blueprint for what happens. It's not a book people are expecting. It's not going to be a nerdy, wonky political science academic book. I'm talking about freedom and what that looks like 250 years from now when you and I aren't here and great, 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 great grandchildren for you and my great, 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 great nieces and nephews. I want their world to be radically different from this one, holding on to those core principles, right?
Right.
The
Right.
context of the Constitution is good, but I think we all agree it needs an update, a refresh, and a repositioning to ensure a better future for
Absolutely.
future
Sophia,
Americans. So
absolutely.
I look forward to doing more with you, Britt. And again, thank you. Your team was wonderful to work with as well.
Oh,
And
they
thank
are.
you for your time.